I'm the managing director of a large consultancy firm. As managing director, I handle all of the day-to-day operations of my company. MD is the second highest position in the company. The only person above me is the CEO. I had joined the company years ago and worked my way up to my current position. But the CEO actually became the CEO because his dad had started the company. When his dad retired, he joined the company directly as the CEO. His dad had been a good CEO. He knew every single employee's name, and he was a very fair boss, but his son is a very rude and demanding boss. He has no work experience in consultancy, so he has no idea of how to run the company. I have to end up doing my job as well as his. This is why all the employees come directly to me with all the issues instead of trying to approach the CEO. I also handle all of the big client meetings because the one time the CEO did it, he ended up insulting the client and losing our company the account. The worst part is that he allows his spoiled and entitled daughter to hang out in the office with her friends. She dropped out of college to become an influencer. Apparently, that's her job now, even though all she actually does is take selfies and go out partying with her friends. She and her friends show up at the office around noon as they wake up only at 11 o'clock. She likes coming to the office and ordering everyone around because her dad is the CEO. I'll call her Allison to make the post clearer. She comes to the office with her friends and makes everyone do stupid and degrading tasks, and if someone refuses, she threatens to have them fired. A couple of weeks ago, one of our accountants refused to go out and buy them a specific kind of coffee that is only sold about 40 minutes away. They also wanted him to entertain them while they drank their coffee. He told them that he was doing his job and that he didn't have to answer to them. This made Allison very angry, and she went running to her dad. Her dad then called the accountant into his office. I knew that the whole situation could go very wrong, so I decided to go with him. When the CEO questioned why I had come to, I told him that as managing director, it was my job to oversee the day-to-day working of the company and the employees. Since the employees were under my command, I needed to be present as their representative, especially because he couldn't be unbiased since it was his daughter's complaint. I also told him that if he asked me to leave, then I would call one of our HR people to write up a proper report. He looked like he was upset, but I just sat down and waited for what Allison had to say. Despite the fact that she had been smirking just a second ago, when her dad asked her what had happened, she immediately started crying. She said that the accountant had been very mean to her and her friends. She also said that all that she had done was ask for coffee and the accountant had behaved badly with her. Before she could continue downplaying her entitled behavior, our accountant said that he was a diligent worker who did his job to the best of his ability, and that he didn't deserve to be treated disrespectfully by his boss's spoiled daughter. He said that it was unprofessional of the CEO to even allow his daughter to just hang around the office because it was a place of work and not their house. He said that all the employees felt the same. The CEO got very angry when he found out that the employees thought that he was unprofessional. He said that it wasn't a big deal if his daughter asked for the staff to do her small favors. At this point, I decided to interrupt and told him that his father never behaved the way he did, and that he had always respected all of his employees. I told him that we could just call him and ask him if he was all right with what was going on, as he was the founder of the company. The CEO slammed his hands on the desk and said that he was in charge now, so there was no need to call his father. He also said that he wanted the names of the employees who had problems with how he was running his company, and that he was going to fire all of them, starting with the accountant. He said that if anyone was rude to his princess, that they would also be fired. I pulled him aside to let him know that he couldn't just fire people without cause, as that opened the company up to lawsuits. He said that he didn't care, because his dad's company is very rich, and he would just crush the lawsuits with his expensive lawyers. I tried to stop him again, but he just went up to our accountant and told him to clear his desk. The accountant told the CEO that he would regret that decision and left. Allison started clapping and thanked her dad for protecting her. I went after our former accountant. When I caught up with him, I apologized for what had happened. He said that I wasn't the one that owed him an apology. He also told me that the whole company knew that I should have been the CEO, and that if I ever wanted to fight for the position, then the whole company would support me over him. I thanked him for what he had said and told him not to take his firing line down. I told him to sue the CEO for wrongful termination because what was done to him was wrong. Ever since then, our company has been embroiled in a wrongful termination suit. When the board of directors found out, they told the CEO that he should just settle the matter quietly by offering him a settlement, but he refused and said that he had done nothing wrong. This meant that the company was paying for the lawyers and an expensive drawn-out case. Ever since this whole incident had happened, Allison had become even more insufferable. Her and her friends would come to the office and tell employees to entertain them. They would make them dance and participate in TikTok trends and humiliate them when they looked foolish doing them. They also made the employees fan them when they were feeling hot. It was very humiliating and degrading. Anyone who refused to listen to their childish demands were promptly fired by her father. This meant that 5 other employees had joined our former accountant in his lawsuit. Due to how many employees were suing the company, the case had actually gotten a lot of media attention. The CEO still didn't tell Allison to stop her behavior, so I went to talk to her. I told her that the company was currently in trouble and she needed to grow up and learn that her action had real consequences. She just laughed and told me that she was too rich to care about what happened to the rest of us peasants who worked at the company. She told me that I was just their attack dog who they sent to fight their battles. She then told me to bark like a dog or she would have me fired. I refused to give in to her brattiness and just left. By that point, I was so sick of both father and daughter that I didn't even care if I got fired. I decided that it was time to put my foot down. I approached the board of directors and told them exactly how the CEO had been running the company. I informed them of how he had brought down the morale of all of the employees and how he let Allison terrorize the employees. I told them that I had been handling all of his responsibilities along with mine because he was completely incompetent. I told them that they could speak to the other employees to see if I was telling the truth. When the board learned everything that had been going on, they told me that they needed to conduct a thorough internal investigation so that they could remove the CEO from the company with proper proof of his misconduct. I agreed and left the investigation to them. I thought that they would just find that the CEO had allowed Allison to threaten and fire his employees, but what the investigation found was much worse. It turned out that the CEO was actually involved in money laundering. He had been embezzling money from the company and laundering it through various offshore bank accounts. When the board informed me of what had been going on, I told them that we had to contact the FBI and make sure that he was punished. All of this had to be done in secret, so that the CEO didn't find out that we were onto him while the FBI carried out their own investigation. A couple of weeks ago, I came into the office late because of a meeting. I saw Allison screaming at one of the employees, telling her to get on the ground and tie her shoelaces for her. I went up to them and told the employee to go back to her office. Allison told me that I had no right to send that employee away and that she was the one in charge of the office. She then said that since I was there, I could tie her shoelaces. Before I could put her in her place, I saw the FBI agents enter the office. They asked me to direct them to the CEO's office. Allison also started following us. I was glad because I wanted her to see her father being dragged out by the FBI. When we reached his office, Allison started crying to him saying that she wanted me to be fired. The FBI cut her off and told the CEO that he was being arrested. Both the CEO and Allison started yelling, but the FBI didn't listen and just dragged him out. Before Allison could follow them, I stopped her and told her that her spoiled and pampered life was over. Her dad was going to jail, and he would have to practically use all of his money as a fine. I told her that all of his shares and his father's shares in the company were going to be taken away. I told her that it was time for her to grow up and get a job because she couldn't live off this company anymore because I was the new CEO. She just started screaming that I had done all of this because I was jealous of her. I didn't want to put up with her anymore, so I just called the security to drag her out. Since I've become the CEO, everything has been running pretty smoothly. I hired all the wrongfully terminated employees back and told all the employees that they would never be under threat again. Our company has been thriving recently and morale is much higher. Last I heard of Allison, she had been dropped by her friends because she no longer had any money. She was forced to go to community college and get a job as a waitress. I'm just glad to put her and her family behind me. This took place a few years ago when I was a 25-year-old female. I had a 20s female coworker whom we'll refer to as Megan. I chose this name because she pretty much was like Megan from Drake and Josh. Annoying, always liked to stir up trouble, and loved eating food that wasn't hers. Well, one day I went to work looking forward to having some of my imported chocolate with my lunch. Lo and behold, I found out that Megan had taken it during our first break and had just eaten it. Now, at the time, we all knew it was Megan doing it, but nobody had any 100% solid proof other than food only going missing on the days that she was there. She didn't work full time, and she was only in 3 days a week. Anyway, so I decided it was time to make her pay. No one eats my chocolate and gets away with it. That night, I went home and baked some brownies with chocolate chunks in them. The next morning, I brought in 2 separate baggies. The first contained regular brownies, nothing special about those. I gave those to my coworkers before Megan arrived, and everyone loved them. The second bag was marked with my name and placed in my lunch. What no one else knew was those 2 brownies in my lunch bag didn't contain normal chocolate chunks. I instead laced those with chocolate laxative squares, about 2 or 3 of them in each. The trap was set. Like clockwork, first break came and went. I didn't check to see if she had taken any of the brownies, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. Not long after the first break, Megan had to frantically leave her desk and nearly sprint to the bathroom. 4 desks away, I'm trying not to laugh. She comes back a considerable amount of time later, but before long, she's back up again. This repeated several more times until I'm pretty sure Megan's insides were more or less empty. While she never said anything, I think most people worked out what had happened. The upside is, Megan never stole food at that place again. I was working at a fairly small meatpacking plant with about 45 employees. The butchering was done in another part of the plant. We would clean, process, sort, and package the meat before shipping it out to different retailers around the area. We had a lunch break room where everyone would leave their lunch boxes while we were out working on the floor. For the most part, the break room was empty most of the day, except during our 30-minute lunch or our 2 breaks that were allotted each day. The door to the break room was basically situated behind all the production lines, so the door was in sight while we worked, but nobody had a reason to keep an eye on it. As it turns out, people began to notice that their desserts would be missing out of their lunches. Someone would remember putting cookies in their lunch or stopping and buying a candy bar, and it would be gone by the time lunch or the last break would come around. Nobody really knew how long it had been going on until we all started talking. Even once we all figured it was happening, it continued to happen with 2 or 3 people's lunches a day. We would try to watch the door to the break room, but there really wasn't a way to track people going in and out. We would jokingly accuse each other, but never could figure it out. Until one day, someone came up with a brilliant plan. Being how we worked in a meatpacking plant, we used edible ink that was used to stamp different grades of meat. We also had syringes used for injecting different marinades or brines in different products. 4 or 5 of us brought Hostess ding-dongs to work in our lunch boxes. If you don't know what a ding-dong is, they are a dark brown chocolate cupcake with a cream center. Perfect for extracting a little petty revenge. We used the syringe to suck out as much of the cream fill as possible through the packaging and injecting them full of thick blue ink. It left a hole in the package about 1/8 of an inch in size, but was otherwise unnoticeable. We then put them in our lunches and waited. It only took a few hours when suddenly the processing line erupted in laughter. Our plant manager, who was the only one in the building who wore a tie and white dress shirt, came running out of the break room and towards his office. Not only were his lips and chin covered in blue ink, but it had run down the front of his shirt and was even on his hands. He disappeared into his office, and we didn't see him for the rest of the day. I'm not sure what the man had to bathe in, but the next day you could barely see it on his lips, we were told by his secretary. as he didn't show his face back out on the production floor for several days. In any case, our desserts and candies stopped disappearing from our lunches, and all was good in the world again. A few years ago, I had my identity stolen right in the middle of a mental health crisis. I was already stressed out and overwhelmed by life, and the identity theft just made everything worse. Suddenly, random purchases like iPhones and laptops were showing up on my bills, purchases that I had never made. The identity thief opened credit cards with my identity, bank accounts, you name it. The authorities were, of course, no help, and I felt very alone in this twisted game of whack-a-mole where every time I thought I had fixed one problem, another popped up. I even had a rental car company come after me as the thief had rented a car in my name and then stolen it. Of course, this was a blow to my credit as well, and resolving the whole thing was enormously stressful. Eventually, I had frozen my accounts, contested the charges, canceled the credit cards, and followed all the appropriate steps. All that was left to do was close the fraudulent bank account. When I went to do so, however, I was met with a snag. I explained the situation to the bank, which was not a bank I personally used, and requested that they close the account. They told me that I could not just delete the account. However, as there was money still in it, approximately $800, which would need to be withdrawn. I explained that that wasn't technically my money, and they replied that the account could not be closed with the money remaining inside. An account that I opened, in which I, Corvidius, put my money. So, guess who's $800 richer? After all the identity thieves took from me, it seemed like appropriate recompense, and only fair to take a little something back.